This is a film study look at Germaine Pratt, a veteran inside linebacker who just signed with the Las Vegas Raiders. I had planned this one after the Bengals released him a handful of days ago as maybe a potential fit for the Ravens or the Seahawks because he's a true will linebacker that plays into the boundary and is excellent in coverage. He doesn't just add depth, if you ask me, to the Raiders linebacker room. I think he's the best inside linebacker on the roster from the standpoint of A, being a veteran who's seen everything and been very adjustable in his time with the Bengals. Had over 140 tackles last year. In fact, 100 plus tackles each of the last 2 seasons. But his coverage game is also very solid, if not spectacular at times. This is a better signing than some people think. First of all, it's a 1 year deal, as I understand it, 4.5 or 4.25 million, something like that. I think that's exceptional value to be able to find a reliable player in June to come in and start. He plays a ton of games. In fact, plays almost every snap in every game. Makes plays in big moments. Tremendous effort and range. Shows up at the football in the film that I will display here. I think will illustrate that. Like I said earlier, led the Bengals in tackles with I think 148, 2024. Very diverse from his statistical production. 7 career interceptions, two each in each of the last 3 seasons. In fact, played on a very good defense in Cincinnati for a couple of years. Now 2023 and then 2024, things went downhill for that group. But Pratt has performed very well and was the odd man out, I guess, since the organization needed money to pay for Trey Hendrickson at this point. We'll get the film going here, and I'm going to talk about Pratt's ability and coverage first. So, if you're unfamiliar with the term boundary, what I mean is everything above that yellow line is the boundary or the short side of the field, since the offense has the ball on the right hash. The film here is going to be comprised from, I think, 3 seasons worth: 2022, 2023, and 2024. A couple of spectacular plays against the pass here first. First, he's very aware. This is man coverage on the running back into the boundary. You can see that I think he's got a high level awareness, meaning he's in man, but he's looking for the quarterback to throw the football. So, man generally is a no no to be looking at the quarterback. You should be guarding your man, paying attention to him. I think he's a guy who understands the situation, the down and distance. In this case, it's a 4th and 2. So, he's looking for a quick throw out on the flats, and it doesn't occur, meaning he's not the targeted player here. But he had eyes on the quarterback, and so as such, is able to move towards the targeted receiver as the ball is thrown. And that's the only thing that really, well, along with great effort by his teammate, allows him to get an opportunity to make a ridiculous interception, like I said, that occurs on a 4th and 2. I'm going to try to give another illustration of his super awareness level. That was a man situation on a 4th down snap. So he understood the ball, generally he's going to come out quick, but he's just so smart and patient in unusual situations. I got an example of this here. And look, Raiders fans will know about, probably remember Pratt, had the game sealing interception in the 2021 wild card round when Cincinnati held on for a 26-19 win. Of course, the Bengals, that propelled the Bengals through the AFC to reach the Super Bowl before their loss to the Rams. I think Pratt played a big role in that defense. And again, I had this video kind of prepped before he signed with the Raiders as an idea for which team would be a great fit. And just kind of looking at the roster for the Raiders from an inside linebacker standpoint, clearly Pratt is the will linebacker. Landon Roberts, maybe Jalen Smith is Mike linebacker number 1. In any case, here's a play against the 49ers, I think 2023. You can see you've got flow to the outside, the bottom side of our screen where those 2 arrows are pointing. It's essentially quarterback power read within a shovel attached to it. So Pratt has the awareness to get in the passing lane and then get his hand up. He's got great timing, if you ask me. So there's just something very disciplined about when he jumps to try to bat or knock down the football. And you'll see another example of it against the Bills here in a little while. I'll give you the end zone angle of this play so you can see it. I want to run it back one more time from the All-22. He does run out of bounds there. It looks like he's going to get potentially score a touchdown. But it's QB power read with a shovel pass attached to it. So the running back going out in this direction, and then secondary option is this tight end on a shovel pass, and all of this in here, they're blocking power. Essentially, there's no kick out though, They're reading the end man on the line of scrimmage. So the end man on the line of scrimmage, Sam Hubbard, took away the shovel. Really, this probably should have been a give, but Purdy is probably seeing the window, meaning he sees the D end and he sees Pratt. So for whatever reason, decides to keep it and sell that as best he can. And in this case, Pratt doesn't fall for it, stays disciplined, stays balanced. Like I said, he's just there's nothing that occurs on the football field that he hasn't seen and he can't react to. Same play from the end zone angle. So the orange path up there is the running back going horizontal from our right to our left to right for their offense. And then the blocking scheme is drawn up with the down blocks being in yellow and the backside guard, the left guard in this case, pulling and wrapping to go presumably block Germaine Pratt. Pratt kind of gap exchanges this. It occurs naturally because I think he's got great vision. You know, you talk about vision with running backs all the time, but for my money, Pratt is one of those guys that has exceptional vision as an inside linebacker and patience. He's already got Purdy outflanked. So he understands he's not going to get outrun to the sideline. Look, his helmet doesn't leave Purdy at all. So that running back going out into the flats doesn't bother him at all. He knows someone else is going to pick him up. The trust, the awareness, I think Germaine Pratt is a super underrated football player in the NFL. There's certainly a lot of inside linebackers talked about in a higher manner or to a better degree than Germaine Pratt, but he's just one of those quietly exceptional football players, if you ask me, against the run and the pass. That's really the type of play that the Cincinnati Bengals defense made for a couple of years in a row, 21-22. Their consecutive AFC Championship game trips. This is an interception against the Panthers during the second of those two such seasons, 2022. So it's a play action concept, and this is not a great throw by the quarterback, PJ Walker, don't get me wrong, but focusing on what Pratt does really well. So he's going to get underneath of this route here by the tight end, kind of spot shadowed, but you lose him a little bit because of the shadows that fall on the field. So Pratt just has great instinct slash awareness, whatever you want to call it, but it's not just accidental. So he's got great vision, and when he reads pass, you can kind of see his helmet here. Track it a little bit if you can. Hopefully, it's not too staccato or too broken up. He reads pass, turns his helmet to look at the route while still getting depth. He's not one of those guys that just stays locked in on the quarterback at all times in zone defense. He reads the route and then sees the quarterback looking in that to his left, to Pratt's left, the quarterback's right. Pratt has settled underneath of the tight end, the over concept emanating from his right to his left or the bottom side of our screen, and then great timing, great hands to finish the play. This is an underrated player, someone that look, I'm a Ravens fan, and so to loud or offer praise for a Bengals player, particularly on the defensive side, is really no fun. But I have to recognize reality. Him and Logan Wilson do an exceptional job in there, or they have done an exceptional job in there. I think with pairing Pratt with Roberts, who comes from that Steelers system, from a Raiders standpoint, probably easy for them to evaluate Elandon Roberts, meaning they had signed Spillane to a bigger contract. He's since moved on to the New England Patriots, like everybody else at this point. But for the Raiders, they probably were able to evaluate or felt comfortable with Roberts because they had seen Spillane execute the same reads in the Steelers' defensive structure and then come over to Vegas and have such success. Jalen Smith, the veteran inside linebacker from the Cowboys and the Giants, also comes over, super athletic, more of a Mike linebacker, if you ask me. Also got Tommy Eichenberg, a second-year player from Penn State. I think Pratt's the best of the bunch. Doesn't mean I don't think the rest of those guys can play. I just think he'll be a leader on the field from the standpoint of getting everybody lined up, getting everybody in the right look, and then actually making badass football plays after the snap. Another interception by Pratt from 2022, kind of emerging of the previous two plays that I've shown. So he's the will linebacker, again, lined up to the boundary. So there is the left hash, and he's lined up to the short side of the field with Logan Wilson lined up to the wide side. Going to get this over concept by Mike Evans, the orange route, and then a short underneath dig, almost dagger-esque, by the number 2 receiver, Godwin. Heavy pressure on Brady. Joseph Asai makes contact with him. The ball's in the air. So how does this work for Pratt? Again, you see the same dynamic. Reading pass, immediately watch his helmet, get his helmet to look for routes from the other side. He sees Evans, peeks twice. So this seems like a simple skill to practice or kind of initiate with inside linebackers. It's not. Number one. Number two, the speed at which things happen at the NFL level kind of makes it extremely difficult or demanding for some of these guys, young players especially, to be able to turn and get their eyes to routes in zone. And then he's got the ability to adjust off of it. Why? Because he's already matching the route that Brady was kind of looking for. So he's either throwing to Evans here. I don't believe that he's throwing to this route up near the sideline. In any case, Pratt ends up with his second interception. Like I said, you're talking about a guy who has 7 career interceptions so far throughout his career with Cincinnati. I think the Bengals are really going to miss him on the field. The way that he played there, the way that he adjusted and got guys in the right look. He makes plays and gets to the football. Like I said, 23 passes defensed in his career, over 600 tackles, 7 forced fumbles, by the way, which I didn't, mention earlier. He's not going to contribute much in terms of sacks, but he's so good at the second level. I would not want to deploy him in that way that often because of his coverage skills and his understanding and ability to fit underneath of or disrupt passing route. Going to be matched up with a running back here against the Bills, 2022 playoffs, I believe, and is a guy who finds a way to make plays. Violent, don't get me wrong, against block destruction, whether it's an offensive lineman, a running back. You're obscured. Our vision is obscured here, kind of by the goalposts and also by the camera. But you can see Pratt kind of just swat or club the running back to the side and then get his hands up. Great timing, like I said earlier, kind of similar to that play against Brock Purdy and the 49ers where he was able to get an interception. If you haven't got the idea yet, I think he's pretty good at everything. Very good against the run. I haven't talked about that yet, but the film lines up. You do have some missed tackles in his career that I had noticed. I would not call him a home run hitter in terms of the way that he tackles. He's going to hit a lot of singles and doubles on every play. Get to the football, part of gang tackling situation. Takes really good angles, if you ask me. Exceptional in that regard, meaning knowing or matching the running back's path with his approach. But I think his best 2 traits might be related to his tremendous vision, and that's block destruction and really ability to avoid or run underneath of blocks altogether. First example here of what I'm talking about. Now, Pratt happens to actually be lined up to the field. I would refer to that as the Mike linebacker. There may be different names in the structure that Pete Carroll utilizes. So the running back path is illustrated by the orange line. Pratt essentially is going to match that path, match the angle that he takes, and go underneath of the pulling center's approach. You get the end zone angle here in a moment so you can see it yourself. Make a tackle right at the line of scrimmage. Very decisive, very clear. You could put a bag behind Germaine Pratt's feet in a training situation, and that bag's never going to get moved. He's not going to understep. He's not going to take a false step. This is a guy that gets to the football, number one, makes tackles, number two, and takes great angles while doing so. Same play from pretty much the end zone angle. Here's the concept as it stands. The right tackle is going to basically base block or try to expand the edge defender. Right guard down blocking on the defensive tackle, and the center is pulling. Kind of like pin pull stretch. People may have different names for it. Pay attention to Pratt. The eyes, the vision, locked onto the running back. So high beams on the running back, low beams, soft lights on the offensive lineman. Ability to dig underneath and avoid the offensive lineman, make the tackle in the backfield, or at least make full contact or make first contact. Usually I would show plays in order by technique or by run/pass. In this case, I'm mixing it up almost intentionally because I think Pratt is one of those guys that adjusts on a play-by-play basis and can impact the game. Look, that whole Bengals group made some somewhat anomalous plays in a 2 to 3 year period. You have Sam Hubbard's 99-yard fumble return for a touchdown against the Ravens to defeat us in the wild card round 2022, the fumble in the jungle. Hendrickson's, or BJ Hill, excuse me, an interception on like an RPO against the Chiefs in their 2021 AFC Championship game. Of course, Pratt's interception to clinch the wild card game against the Raiders. Basically, you're talking about a smart veteran defense, and Pratt, like I said earlier, was really at the forefront of it. I recognize, though, that he's probably not a name that a lot of NFL football fans have paid attention to or heard a lot about. This is one of those, I would say, somewhat anomalous plays. He's actually going to get lost here by Kincaid into the boundary. Kincaid kind of crosses him up, the tight end for the Bills. Completed pass in between the top of the numbers and the hash. The beauty of the way that they played defense there for a number of years was uh, hustle was unpredictable, and this is certainly an example of it. So Nick Scott, Maryland safety, ends up tackling Kincaid or going low. Kincaid tries to hurdle him. And then right here, I will give you the end zone angle in a moment, is where Pratt comes recovering from behind, punches the football out, and actually in a couple of other plays that you'll get in this video, you'll see what I'm talking about, where Pratt is always punching at the football, and in this case is able to knock it out of Kincaid's control. Same play from the end zone angle. There is Pratt, and you can see he gets crossed up by Kincaid. Completed pass from Josh Allen. And then here is the aforementioned punch out. Perfect timing, right when the ball was vulnerable, able to punch it out. Scott able to get on top of it and recover it. It's just a perfect illustration of what Pratt and so many others on that Bengals defense under Lou Anarumo were able to do for 2 or 3 years. In my observation from watching the film of so many battles between the Ravens and Cincinnati, Germaine Pratt's just a no BS player. I expect he'll have an impact in Las Vegas, even if it's at minimum or as a floor, 50 to 55 smart, professional level snaps every week, whether it's a pass drop, whether it's a run fit, a stunt. At minimum, this is a very good inside linebacker who's going to be involved in 110, 120 plus tackles, play solid pass defense to the boundary. I think there's great value in this deal. Like I said, I was already working on Pratt film for potential signing with the Ravens or the Seahawks, thinking that he could be an option as a will linebacker there. The Raiders wasted no time improving the roster. He's also, like I showed with the previous play, very adept at knocking the ball out, 7 forced fumbles, and very reliable in terms of the number of games he plays per season and the number of snaps that he plays each week. Some film from a 2023 matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars. It was a 34-31 win. So in terms of the gaps responsible, he's lined up again to the boundary, but his left foot is on the midline. He's got the front side A gap or the A gap to our left, the offense's left, and then Logan Wilson technically would serve as the will linebacker if you were to draw up the front, but he's lined up to the field. So in any case, takes a strike almost underneath of the chin from the center, and then able to work over the top of it and fit into a gap that really is not his. So what I mean is he's going to end up making the tackle in here, not his gap to do so. Defensive tackle also making contact. I believe it's Carter. Wherever the football goes, especially into the boundary, Germaine Pratt's going to be there. This is probably one of my favorite run fits that I have seen since I began to try to evaluate NFL film. It's a F counter scheme by the Jags. And in fact, from the end zone angle in the all-22, you'll see that Pratt is staring at the H-back / tight end. It's Evan Ingram, who at this point has since been released by the Jags. Now, you may watch the play initially and say, Coach, this looks kind of innocuous. I'm not sure why you're so impressed with it. Again, I'm referencing the vision that I've talked about. So let's show the path in slow motion a couple of times he takes to the ball. So you got a kick out block by the guard, number one. And then number two, the tight end / H-back is wrapping off of this wall of blockers, try to go get the front side inside linebacker. Pratt goes over the top of the tackle, trying to get to a combo block, and then underneath of Ingram, very similar to what he did in one of the run fits that I showed you against the Buffalo Bills. DJ Reader makes a beautiful play. He's a very underrated guy on the defensive line anyway, but there's Pratt. This is the end zone angle, the same play. There's Pratt eyeing Ingram. Here's the blocking scheme. The left guard, number 76, going to pull and try to kick out the defensive end. And then the H-back / tight end, Ingram, going to wrap and try to get up to Germaine Pratt. End zone angle a couple of times. I think it's actually more fun to watch this one full speed. Over the top of the tackle, getting skinny again with the other shoulder. And check out the footwork to do so. Right shoulder dipping a little bit and ripping. Left shoulder dipping a little bit and then making the tackle. DJ Reader, like I said, makes first contact, winning against Brandon Scherf. It's a beautiful run fit, if you ask me, kind of illustrative of what you can get with Germaine Pratt, a guy who on a play-by-play basis can do pretty much anything that's asked of a will linebacker. I mentioned his versatility in coverage earlier. As an inside linebacker, typically you're a hash dropper in a zone coverage scheme, meaning you're dropping to the hash or playing man on the running back to the boundary. It's kind of expected of what a will be tasked to do. The coverage paradigm the coverage umbrella, that you can offer with a guy like Germaine Pratt out there is a little bit wider. I would like to maybe do a second look at some RPO coverages and things the Bengals did and what they asked Germaine Pratt to do against RPOs. You got kind of a look at that type of scheme in the QB power read / shovel that Brock Purdy and the 49ers tried to run against them in 2023. I'm going to show a version of Cover 3 that I really enjoy for a lot of reasons because it's given teams trouble before. And also just because it's really fun to move an inside linebacker from a hash dropper position into the flats, because what it can do to a quarterback who is trying to execute a second level read. So here's the way that this is going to work out. The spot shadowed safety, I think, is Dax Hill. He's going to drop down to the hash or really stay right around the 40-yard line. Germaine Pratt, the inside linebacker, is got flat responsibility, so he's pushing out on the blue line that you see at the bottom of the screen, and then the hash and the curl flat to the top side of the screen are covered by Logan Wilson and Mike Hilton. Doesn't look like a perfect Cover 3 delineation because you've got varying degrees of depth here, and in fact, I think Dax Hill could probably play this a little bit closer, such that when the ball is completed to Ingram, he's in position to maybe make the tackle a little bit sooner. Pratt has to recover. It's a 2nd and 14, so really from that standpoint, you don't really care about giving up 7 or 8 yards. My point in showing this to you is that just because Pratt lines up to the boundary doesn't mean that he's going to drop to the hash, which is where Dax Hill ends up here. I don't make any assertions about what I think of the Raiders defense. I would like to maybe take a look at some Jacorian Bennett film because he's a Maryland guy. But in any case, looking at Germaine Pratt, I think he's a guy that offers coverage versatility and efficiency in pretty much any coverage that you draw up on the board. One last run fit. It's a jet sweep to his side into the boundary. Again, run by Jacksonville. Really, it's a gimme, but I illustrate this to continue to talk about his awareness and what his eyes are looking at. The reason why his vision is so exceptional is because, first, I believe he's incredibly smart, but also, second, he's actually using his eyes. You see, when Lawrence executes a motion indication with his left foot and really starts moving, Germaine Pratt actually begins to start tracking him. Since the tight end has to deal with the edge defender, in this case Hubbard, you're talking about a 3-on-2, or really it turns into a 3-on-1 once Hubbard wins his battle. But like I said, it's kind of a gimme for a guy like Germaine Pratt with his level of awareness, athleticism, and experience. I do think there's some evidence in the film that Germaine Pratt could play Mike linebacker to the field with his speed, his physicality and strength, his ability to fit against the run. He's very smart. Some would refer to it again as instinctive, but I think it's preparation. The problem is, Elandon Roberts can't play well linebacker. When you watch the film of him with the Steelers, you'll see quite obviously why that would, severely limit the coverage umbrella into the boundary. A Jalen Smith, a Tommy Eichenberg, those guys probably more so suited to Mike linebacker. Devin White, a veteran inside linebacker who's spent a lot of time playing will, is certainly an option from a depth standpoint. I think Pratt is the best guy on the roster that I see right now. I think his coverage versatility pushes this signing. This is an A-level signing for the fit. And meaning when I look at the Raiders depth chart, at inside linebacker. I think they had a very clear need at the will position. Neither Eichenberg nor Roberts, to me, looks like a will linebacker. Devin White has typically served in that role. I think the difference between coverage ability in White and Pratt is large. The actual ability to do so, and then the width of options that is offered by Germaine Pratt is significantly wider as well. So I think this addresses a need. Um, I'm not really covering missed tackles here, of which there certainly are some. I think it was like 16 or 17 in 2024. Again, I don't consider him a heavy hitter. To use a combat sports analogy, he's not a knockout guy. He's someone that would win a bunch of decisions, but he's going to make a lot of tackles and does many things extremely well. Particularly some instances of play that I haven't really shown here, and that would be match coverages, where you're reading the release of the number two receiver and or the running back. I have no idea how often Carroll and the defensive staff in Las Vegas are going to do that, but Pratt can play it. Basically, it's one of the things that made Lou Anarumo's defensive structure in Cincinnati so effective. They could be extremely multiple and cause quarterbacks some hesitation or concern long enough such that the pass rush could get there. Finally, the reason why I really like this signing, besides the fact that I wanted to finish this body of work because I had already begun it, is that he plays well in big moments. He plays smart in big moments. During their Super Bowl run in 2021, then 22, the AFC Championship loss in Kansas City. For me, I recognize some may say, "Hey, he's an underrated guy," but I don't think he's worth this type of attention. He's only getting 4.5 million a year. I have a tremendous amount of respect for the inside linebacker position, having some knowledge or awareness of how to coach it, at a far lower level than the NFL, obviously. But I also think Pratt's a winner. He competes, and there's a lot of pieces there in Las Vegas for the defense to be significantly improved. How far along will Darian Porter be developed? He's one of my favorite players in the pre-draft process. Obviously, you know what you're going to get out of healthy versions of Max Crosby and Wilkins, guys like that. In any case, this is my film study of Germaine Pratt, who's still only 29 years old. I think he's got a lot to contribute. Selfishly, as a Raiders fan, you would have really enjoyed watching Pratt play next to Spillane, who's more of a Mike linebacker to the field. In any case, Landon Roberts can give you a modicum of what Spillane did, particularly against the run, not so much in pass coverage. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're a Raiders fan, please let me know in the comment section, number one. Number two, if you think others Raiders fans would possibly enjoy this piece of work that I produced, a film study video about Germaine Pratt, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.